This week on Vaticano, Pope Francis opens the 42nd meeting of governors of the UN International Fund for Agricultural Development in Rome. Also, meet the Ndoci family and their son Lucas, christened by Pope Francis. Discover the life of a Swiss guard after service. Join us for all this and more on this week's Vaticano. More than 20 million people in the world face starvation. The Holy See has always been committed to the fight against hunger in the world. This is why Pope Francis, for the fourth time, visited the UN agency based in Rome dealing with agriculture, food, and empowering rural societies.
Señoras, señores.
During his speech at the opening ceremony of the 42nd meeting of governors of the International Fund for Agricultural Development in Rome, the Holy Father encouraged the international community to fulfill their responsibilities to people who live in precarious situations.
It is paradoxical that a good part of more than 820 million people that suffer hunger and malnutrition in the world live in rural areas. This is paradoxical because they are dedicated to working as farmers and in food production.
Pope Francis noted that there's hope in winning the battle against hunger and poverty, but complete defeat will result if the problem is not taken seriously. At the end of his speech, the Holy Father invoked the theme of this year's meeting, innovations and entrepreneurial initiatives in the rural world, and stressed the great importance of the use of technology in serving people in need.
It is necessary to promote a science with conscience and place technology truly at the service of the poor.
The International Fund for Agricultural Development is the United Nations agency that works to eradicate poverty and hunger in remote areas of developing countries. The Holy See has had a permanent observer mission at the United Nations since April of 1964. After his address, Pope Francis met with a group of representatives of indigenous peoples who were in Rome for the fourth world meeting of the Forum of Indigenous Peoples. Addressing the group, the Pope said that the indigenous, with their abundance of languages, cultures, traditions, knowledge, and ancestral methods, remind us that man is not the owner of nature, but only its steward, that one must watch over it with care, and that indigenous peoples know how to live well in harmony with the earth. This year, the Church pays a particular attention to the pastoral care of indigenous peoples and their needs. This year's Synod of Bishops is dedicated to the Pan-Amazon region, where many indigenous live. Meeting with members of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, Pope Francis pointed out that the liturgy cannot be reduced to a matter of taste or become the subject of ideological polarization, because it is a primary way for people to encounter the Lord.
When we look back to nostalgic past tendencies, or wish to impose them again, there is the risk of placing the part before the whole, the I before the people of God, the abstract before the concrete, ideology before communion, and, fundamentally, the worldly before the spiritual.
The congregation held its plenary assembly from the 12th to the 15th of February in Rome with the theme Liturgical Formation of the People of God. Pope Francis privately met with Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, on the evening of February the 13th, ahead of the plenary meeting of the Pontifical Academy for Life on the theme Roboethics.
We appreciate your voice.
Microsoft President Brad Smith recognized that in this critical moment in time, where people create technologies, there's a need for Christian values. Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
Earlier this year, the permanent mission of the Holy See to the UN Geneva and the Catholic Diocese of Lausanne, Geneva and Fribourg invited to this interreligious service. The service was based on Pope Francis's message on the occasion of the World Day of Peace. Good politics is at the service of peace.
Ideally,
Politics should not be seen simply as another job. Bad politics breed violence and war, whereas good politics bring about non-violence and peace.
Your Excellency, it seems in our world today there is more politics at the service of war or hate for foreigners than for peace. What is your opinion on this?
This has become also a conviction of people. It's not just politics. It means it's society that changed. So this is why international organizations with their ideals, and I would say also the Holy See Catholic Church, with our vocation, we have to stand in this dialogue active and look to find new solutions.
In this interfaith service that was arranged largely by the Holy See, it was for diplomats also, for diplomats of the United Nations. How do they respond when you talk to them about those type of situations?
I think, they expect from us to do something similar to what we do.
Is it like a alibi that they say, well, we don't want it, but we allow it?
I would say so. It's more than that even. This is something expected. I would say they know that life is different, but we have this welcome approach that was accepted, and I think what we do is somehow only we could do is probably.
In your view, does the Catholic Church enough to educate people on other religions?
I think it is only practically last 50 years or 100 years that we see that we have to accept different position, not because, let's say, because the time changed and the world changed and society changed, and we have to accept everybody as a brother and maintain dialogue with everybody.
And it's very much on Pope Francis' heart, the interfaith dialogue. He recently was even in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, to show certain dialogues, interfaith dialogue with the Muslims.
He said we have to walk away from the position of enemies. We have to walk closer to the position of universal fraternity, of being brothers. And he's really very much convinced too, and the other accept this proposal as a positive and constructive proposal.
Yeah, we should not forget the Pope is also a statesman. He is the representative of the Vatican State.
This is giving him, let's say, possibility to intervene in the events that he would not be allowed only as a religious leader. But I think what is important is his personal conviction and strong conviction, which is not changing when all the environment seems to change. So he is somehow defending values that are precious for the mankind.
Now, with interfaith dialogue, some people say there is a risk that one religion uses this really to try to convert someone to another religion. But that's not the idea of interfaith dialogue, right?
Exactly, exactly. We have to know that we have two dialogues, if you can say, or two concepts. One concept is of interreligious dialogue, which means knowing each other, learning from each other, but also from the other point, a responsibility with other to a common culture. The other is religious freedom. This is much more demanding thing, because religious freedom means you have personal freedom to choose the religion that you prefer or you see as the right one. And all these things, I think, show how important are events like the one that we had.
And show unity.
And show unity, let's say, on the exemplary basis. So showing, not just saying it's so, but showing, look at me and see my conviction, which are every day repeated and always expressed.
The Vatican Sistine Chapel once a year is transformed into a baptistry. Where the Pope himself baptizes the infants and the pure voices of the Sistine Chapel choir mix with the gurgles and the cries of babes.
Volete dunque che Lucas
This year, the Holy Father baptized 15 girls and 12 boys. Lucas Ndoci Lancho was one of them.
Lucas, io te battezzo nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo.
My name is Rocío. I'm from Spain. George is my husband. He is from Albania. And this is our son Lucas. He was born here in Rome about 2 months ago.
It was very special for us because Lucas has been one of the 27 kids being baptized by Pope Francis, and our family was really well represented. So we have had families from Albania, from Greece, from Spain and England who came to participate in this big joy of baptism.
Already, the sacrament to baptize our first child is an immense joy. And in our case, it's a plus in the way that we have lived it. The fact that it was Pope Francis who baptized the child is very important to us. Because actually we met each other thanks to the trip of Pope Francis to Albania, and from there a series of coincidences happened that allowed us to get to know each other better. So for us, the fact that the Pope has baptized our son is very important.
All'inizio della cerimonia,
At the beginning of the ceremony, you were asked the question, "What do you ask for your children?" And all of you said, "The faith."
e tutti voi avete detto la fede.
In the homily of the day of the baptism, there were 2 important things that the Pope insisted a lot. On the theme of faith, he said it is transmitted mainly in the family, and he spoke about the important role that we take on as both parents and godparents on the day of the baptism. And he also spoke about the importance of not arguing in front of the children. He explained it in a nice way, and he said that it is important for children. So getting the advice from the Pope right from the beginning is something really special.
I think anyone can be baptized by Pope Francis then. But employees has, they are more, maybe they have privilege. It's much easier probably because they are Vatican employees to baptize their kids. The story, when it started with Saint John Paul II in 1989, and that time Pope John Paul, he baptized only one kid, but not at Sistine Chapel. At the chapel, it's called Cappella Paulina, and it was the kid of the Prince Orsini. And then this tradition was taken by Pope Benedict and then now by Pope Francis.
The baptism of children at the Vatican happens every year on the feast of the baptism of Jesus, this year on January the 13th, while the Holy Father baptizes adults who have converted to the Catholic faith at the Easter Vigil.
Con la parola e con l'esempio, in Cristo Gesù nostro Signore. Amen.
In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. Welcome to EWTN's Vatican Studios. I'm Alan Holdren, here with a longtime member of the Pope's Private Guard, Captain Froven Bachmann. Thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure being with you.
So can you tell us, Captain, if we just start from the very beginning, why did you become a Swiss Guard?
A lot of people, also me, they want to try to serve the Pope in the Swiss Guard for different reasons. Maybe faith, religious, but a lot of them also to know another languages, to know another culture, to go abroad, to have a special experience outside of Switzerland. And so these are motivations, also my motivation to come to Rome.
How old were you then?
I was 20 years old. Normally, most of the guards enter the Swiss Guard when they are more or less 20, 23 years old, because you have to have finished your military service in Switzerland, is one of the conditions, and then you can enter this or apply for this duty.
What are the other conditions? What's the age range and what sort of person do you need?
Yes. So at the beginning you must have finished your studies in Switzerland or an apprenticeship or other studies. Then you must have finished your military service. So you must be able to do a military service. Then good reputation. You need a certification of your parish, from the police, and all kinds of reputation. Then you must be single at the entrance. After you have also the opportunity to get married, but at the beginning you have to be single. Then there is you must be tall at minimum 1.70 m, because for our representative service.
And what is it that a captain does? What did you do when you finished your service?
As a captain, you have you are responsible for a group of more or less 30 guards. So you guide them. You're responsible during the daily service or also during Pope's audiences. You're guiding, leading this group. You are the person responsible if they have problems, so they will contact you. You are organizing, and this is the normal duty, normal service. Then a part of them we have also administrative things to do. So I was also responsible for finance and also the kitchen running. We have nuns who are running the kitchen, but for all the that the kitchen was functioning well, it was also my duty.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the religious aspect earlier, the spiritual aspect. Something people may not know a whole lot about within the Swiss Guard. How is that nurtured and formed? I remember the current commander saying at one point, holding up a rosary and saying, "This is the most powerful weapon of a Swiss Guard." What is it?
So when somebody decided to enter the Swiss Guard, he should have also a religious background. When I entered the Guard, it was, for example, they asked me, it was necessary that you went every Sunday to Mass. Nowadays, it's nearly impossible to ask this for Swiss youth, because you didn't find a lot of young people who every Sunday go to Mass. But it's almost already important that they have a religious background, or they are also searching for their religious life, or are open-minded for religious demands, because if you decide to serve the Pope, so you must also defend him not only with the weapons, but also you must stay behind the things the Pope says, not? And this sometimes nowadays it's quite more difficult than to defend him only with the weapons. So already at the beginning should be a religious motivation, but during the time after in the Guard we have a chaplain who is responsible for the Swiss Guard, and you have formation. He organizes lessons, so that you can also, during your time in the Swiss Guard, that you have the possibility to grow up in your faith, to see things perhaps better than you saw it before in Switzerland, and you have the opportunity also to live the universal church, not only the local church, but the beauty of the universal church, and that is a great thing also, no?
And if you look at your service, you served John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Pope Francis, all three. What were the differences? If you could just describe briefly, how did things change from one to another?
John Paul II was a very active Pope, always a lot of audiences and quite a lot movements like this, no? And after Pope Benedict was a little bit more quiet, more intellectual, no? And then it changed again with Pope Francis, because he also quite active, but very different from the others, because he wants to be free and do the things like he wants, you know.
And if you look at the life of a Swiss Guard and your life as a Swiss Guard, what was the defining moment? What was one of, well, let's say, the most important moment in the life of a Swiss Guard and your life as a Swiss Guard?
For me, I think a very important or very impressive was always being on trip with the Pope in other countries. Because there sometimes really you have such a lot of people on the streets and you come with the Pope. And I have always the idea, it wasn't only you came with the Pope, but you came with Jesus Christ. They are not only applauding for the Pope, but because they were full of hope for the good words in the world. And sometimes I had tears in my eyes, because I knew we were not only with the Pope there in the mass with a lot of people, no. And for me, I think also to live this universality of the church, not only the local parish, but see the beauty of the church in all the world. Different with every church is different in the world, no. But the beauty of the Universal Catholic Church was very beautiful to see and to live this experience.
How many international trips did you make?
15, more or less, 15.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What happens to a Swiss Guard when he finishes his service? I'm sure it changes for every different one.
I knew that after 30 years serving the church, I wanted to go on doing something for the church. So I started my new activity, and I offering services to people, to group, to parishes who come to Rome, and I help them to organize well their trip to Rome, but in special nature that they have the opportunity to organize also masses, spiritual things connected with Rome, and not only the normal program.
And just a final question, is there a group of former Swiss Guards? Is there a club? Is there some sort of, are there reunions? How do you catch up?
Yes. In Switzerland we have an association of ancient Swiss Guards all over the Switzerland, one association, and then they are regional association from the Asian Swiss Guard of the Ticino, or Asian Swiss Guard of Western Switzerland, and so there are different organizations. And we have also not an association, but a group of Asian Swiss Guard living in Rome. We are more or less 12 Asian Swiss Guard who are living in Rome. So we meet also 3-4 times a year, come together, do something together.
Ah, great, good.
Yeah.
A last question. Can only Swiss people be Swiss Guards?
Yes, you have to be Swiss. Some people think it's only the name Swiss Guard, but we have to be Swiss. And this is history. The Swiss came 500 years ago because they were famous to go abroad and fight for other kings, and so they made her name because they were strong and were always very loyal to their patron, no? And so the Pope heard also that we have the state of church, and the Pope wanted also Swiss in his army to protect the state of church, but the Swiss said no, they can come, but only as a personal guard and a guard of the palace, but not to fight on the fields to protect the state of church.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.